there, it's Sandee Sgarlata. Get ready to dive deep into incredible stories of people who've taken life's challenges and turned them into a roadmap to happiness. On this show, we're not just talking about overcoming obstacles. We're uncovering the real, gritty secrets to living a life filled with peace, joy, and genuine happiness. This is Happiness All. So let's get started, because happiness is a choice, and the choice is yours. Daniela, such a pleasure to have you on today. How's everything going?
It's such a pleasure to be on with you, Sandee. Everything is going wonderful.
Fantastic. Well, I'm excited to talk to you about not only your wisdom, but your book, Gliding You Home. So interesting. And we're gonna touch base on that in a minute. But how did you get to where you are today? Because I love to hear people's stories, because that's
Sure,
how we learn and grow, right?
absolutely. And don't we all have our story, right?
Yes, we do.
And we are so influential. I think sometimes, Sandee, a story is like the spices of life. You ever gone to a restaurant and you're excited to eat the meal and then it's all flat? There's no spices. you
Yeah.
know
Oh, yeah. Plenty of times.
Yes, I have too, and I don't know how I happen to be Swiss, Sandy, and love to eat everything with hot peppers and black pepper. But either way, the spice of life. So I was born and raised in Switzerland, and at a fairly early age, it just felt like there was so much more to life than what I saw out there and what I saw that people live out there, Sandy. I felt like oftentimes people were just kind of trotting along and just living
Yep.
what was programmed and the societal expectations and the upbringing and whatnot. And I just kind of felt like, woo, vibrant living. I guess that is the name of my business. Um, and so I felt like I wanted to explore a little bit more about the world and the people and the mindsets. And so this kind of started me on this journey very early on, Sandy, and I happen to have grown up with parents that were also entrepreneurs. And particularly my dad was quite left and right brained, like I am also. And so he was very much into philosophy and the philosophy of life and the art of living life, you know?
Yeah.
So, and when I was around 18, I decided before I went to get my bachelor's degree, I decided to come to the United States and travel. And so it was quite the experience, Sandy. You know, I felt like when we left Switzerland, it was a very, very cold winter. And one of my girlfriends lived high up in the mountains. As a matter of fact, she couldn't even take a shower because the pipes froze. You imagine that? I live in California now, so it's pretty hot
I'm
here.
on the East Coast and it's a problem.
Oh, I see.
I've lived through many frozen pipes in my life, so yes.
Oh, wow. So you do know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
But I remember when my feet first touched the floor here in the United States, in California, in San Francisco. I remember the following day waking up and stepping out onto that balcony and seeing palm trees for the first time. It was in the 70s, which to us in January was like heaven. Now it's sort of a little chilly living in California. But I remember, the air felt softer. You know,
Huh.
there was just a different energy in the air I had not experienced. And I just felt like my spirit and my mind and everything just opened up to this adventure called life and what was about to unfold during my trip.
Wow. So what brought you to, okay, because you talk about in your book that you forged a profound connection with the highly intelligent and intuitive dolphin consciousness, unraveling the secrets that lie within our spiritual potential. How did that come about? Because that's what I'm really curious about.
Right.
It's
That's
something that you don't hear a lot about. as I mentioned before we started recording, I've never spoken with anybody who talks about dolphin consciousness, because it's kind of
Yes.
it's very mysterious.
Yes. And it is mysterious because now is the time. Now is the time for the wisdom to come forth. And believe me, I didn't plan on this. Just to put that out there. I didn't plan on this. So, like I started earlier, Sandee, I've always been a bit of a spiritual traveler, or a traveler of an adventurer of the mind and possibilities, right? So, I had written my first book, which is High Performance Without Pain, where we really explored the different dimensions of the seven habits and how can you live life in the flow, right? Because having always been somewhat of a high performer, I traveled back and forth and back to Switzerland and did seminars, taking care of my parents, burning their candle at both ends. And so that also triggered a lot of physical symptoms, which is where the dolphins are going to come in a minute. So that
Okay.
triggered a lot of physical symptoms. I had already gone through what's called somewhat of an ascension process, where just like a car, you can't go faster if you're driving a Beetle car, right? You need to get into a Porsche, and that means everything inside your being also starts to upgrade. Your body, your nervous system, everything starts to upgrade. Well, during that time, I had experienced a lot of physical pain, a lot of nerve pain. It's almost like I almost got viral attacks quite often. And so there was a phase where it was extremely intense. And even though I was used to regulating my energy, I could just barely handle it. And so I was in a lot of physical pain. And what ended up happening was I just hit my limits.
Hmm.
I just hit my limits. I couldn't, and nerve pain is a really eerie kind of pain. It's different than other kind of pain. And so I felt myself really at my limit. And as I was sitting and closing my eyes, I slipped into this deep state and I literally slipped to the other side, to the other dimension. It wasn't a meditative state because many of us that meditate, we're used to going into these altered states, right? But this was literally, I surrendered and the resistance that I was holding on to as a human, right? We have this resistance. And so I just let it go. It was, and as I let it go, it was like, woo! It just picked me up and took me to that other side. And it's challenging to explain because it's so intense. And however, my first experience very much was the way I always imagined it would be in terms of unity, connection. The reality was very different. And from that place on, once I returned, it took me about a year or so to readjust to everything I had felt because it was felt like so many of my filters were gone. And then when I came back into my body, I was like, oh, wow, my whole reality looked dull. And I'd always been someone that loved life for the most part. I'm like the rest of people. Some days are better than others,
Yeah.
but I've always loved life. And when I came back, I was like, well, this is a dull show. It was
Because you
very,
had a comparison to
oh
something
my word.
remarkable.
It,
Yeah.
it flabbergasted me. I
Yeah.
mean, it absolutely flabbergasted me. And then also because now I was traveling so quickly back and forth, I was afraid of closing my eyes or going into these deeper states because I was slipping, back and forth all the time. So that was, of course, also getting used to bringing that reality back into this reality while being in the body, while still maintaining in the physical body.
Can
So,
you just pause for a second before you go on and explain to the audience what you're referring to? Because I'm just guessing, can you just explain it a little bit better about what you're talking about in terms of slipping into a different reality?
Yes. So oftentimes as we are evolving, as our consciousness is evolving, or like I said earlier, our body goes through these changes as well. It doesn't just stay mute or dull or numb. It regulates itself. Just like if you're taking a plane and you go into higher elevations, you can't go with a helicopter, right? So the body is going to go through all sorts of changes as you are experiencing that. And then you can go into these different plateaus and see higher and further. And for that, the body has to adjust to that. However, when we're going to the other side, many of the filters that we have when we're human, they fall away. Just like when a person that's on the other side and um, they come back over here onto they're being born basically. They're being born, and so the veil of amnesia starts to fall over them, and they can no longer remember what happened on the other side, Sandee, because right.
Right. So, right, because you're talking about when babies are born,
Yes,
I've heard, they say that they say, right, whoever they are, say that babies can remember where they were before.
they
And
still
then,
do.
yes, and then it takes a few years and they're not able to communicate with us because they don't know how to talk yet.
Right, right. And then
Right.
the veil of amnesia gets thicker and thicker as we
Right.
grow up and we can't remember anymore.
Right.
And that has to be that way because it is human resistance and the ego that keeps us here on planet Earth, which when the person starts to surrender all resistance, what happens is that is then when the soul starts to release its spirit, the body follows and goes to the other side. And
Okay.
so what happened to me when I went to that other side and I came back, I was somewhat in a state of shock because of the reality, because like you just said, Sandee, there's the comparison to what
So
is here.
this wasn't like a near death experience. Did you start in a meditative state? Like, how did that, I guess that's
No,
where I'm
this
kind of
this
confused.
was this was a near death
It was a
experience.
near death
Yeah.
experience. Okay.
It was. It's not what I associated it with at the beginning because it was so new to me. Because I'm an
Okay.
avid meditator, so going into altered states is very different than leaving your body
Yeah.
and then coming back into it. Those are completely two separate things. For that, one really has to surrender the spirit
Okay.
in order to transition to go over to that other side and then come back with the messages, as many people that have had near death experiences have spoken about.
Okay. 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 So, because I had interrupted you, I apologize.
That's
So,
okay.
yeah, if you can continue with
So
explaining this.
does that make more sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. Yes, for
Yes.
sure.
So it was through that pain, and I've had that pain on and off throughout the years, that my body and my spirit just let go. It's just, and it's something that just happens. You cannot make that happen. I was not in a meditative state. I was sitting on my L-shaped couch innocently minding in my own business, and off I went because I just couldn't handle it anymore. So then the information that I was given was, so first I had to adapt, Sandee, to
Hmm.
a different reality, different things that I saw, many things that I thought I knew were just no longer true. So there's a chapter in Gliding You Home, A Dolphin's Dream of a New Earth, that's called Losing Your Mind. And in that particular chapter, I talk about the experiences of what happens is when suddenly your reality is, in quotation, challenged, indirectly challenged, and what you thought you knew is just no longer true.
Right.
Because now suddenly you're seeing dimensions, and you see into the multi dimensions that you simply did not see or look into before because you were unable. Like I said, I did not necessarily choose that. I've always channeled to a certain degree, being a sensitive and an intuitive, but this was different. And so at the
Okay.
beginning, I was like, "You guys want me to do what? Right? Channel this book?" I'm like, "You guys are crazy. I'm a corporate coach, speaker, life coach. Yes, I'm intuitive. Yes, I'm a sensitive. But you want me to do what?"
Well, you listened and you did it.
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah. So let's dive into what you're talking about with connecting with the wisdom of dolphins
mhm.
through their collective consciousness,
Yes,
which is our collective consciousness, right? I mean,
yes,
it's all the same.
yes,
Can you explain that?
yes. So what happens is that you were just saying, like I just said, when I was going over to the other side, and then I came back, and then I'm like, "You guys are crazy. You want me to write this book, to channel this book?" It is because the time now is about us stepping into the seed of our soul and living our life from the seed of our soul.
Is that because we're now in the age of Aquarius?
Yes, and it is time that we are moving into greater alignment. I'm not talking religion, I'm not talking
Right.
political affiliation.
Yep.
This is really the survival of the spirit of the human race. And
I've been
recognizing,
telling people for months now, we're now in an age of survival of the fittest, and it's not survival of the fittest physically, it's up here.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So it very much then altered some of my viewpoints because I had already previously spoken with clients about, especially with my corporate clients, because I do always have a very holistic approach, a very integrative approach, being left and right brained, which really then is exactly what it allows me to do, is to work with the corporate audience and over here with the more spiritual audience. And now through the book, I sort of had to blend all that, like the infinity symbol.
Right, right.
But this time, in terms of their consciousness, really is about realigning into the power of love versus the love of power.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
The
for,
power of love versus the love of power. Because
mhm,
we're seeing a lot of that right now.
as you know it, and
Yes.
right, we're heading toward
Yeah,
elections.
that's right.
So, so, so very much the book, my first book, was just a prelude to the second book. The first book is about the practical 7 habits that really help you build the personality, the character traits to start to live life, whether you are a corporate person or not, from a place of presence, from a place of judgment awareness habit two, from a place of acceptance and belonging habit through from a place three, from a place of compassionate action, not just compassionate action, habit four, and habit five, from a place of equanimity and communication, in listening, in moving much greater into your own personal self leadership, not other leadership, to becoming, to falling back into that realignment of what your soul was meant to be, do, and have.
I love it. So, what are some tips, tools that you can provide to help people kind of fall into that alignment. There's
Yes.
so many things that people, we've got our fears, we've got our limiting beliefs. I'm seeing a lot of that coming up now in people and the clients that I work with. Lack of confidence, but people, I feel like people are starting to like ask the right questions,
Mhm.
you know,
Yes.
because people are aware. I feel like people are aware that there's a shift that's taking place. They just don't know what it is and they don't understand it.
It's a great way of putting it, Sandy. I do think people are looking for answers in different ways now because the old is just falling apart. Not in just in the world, but even within themselves,
Right.
and there is so much energy influx also that we're all experiencing together. We're not, as you know, we're not an island, right? So I just this past weekend, in reference to your question, gave a retreat. It was called Dolphin Harmony Meditation and Inner Peace Alignment Retreat. And folks from many different walks, from the president of a college to just many different walks, right? And it really is not about your education or anything else, but really about coming back home to who you are as a soul. And of course, mindfulness is a very big key component. And I'm a big advocate in my coaching philosophy in regards to self-love and compassionate accountability. So coming back into that place where you are acknowledging who you are, what your needs are, where you're going, who you're doing it with, and why not. So being able to realign and bringing the focus back from external orientation, which is the external dictating in, to internal orientation, where you are moving from the inside out. And really just very much like the scale, finding your center before you go out every day, before you write that email, before you make that phone call, right? So
Right.
constantly realigning yourself into yourself. I feel oftentimes we make too much of it. It's really meant to be much more simple,
Yeah.
Sandy. Much more
Yeah.
simple. It's even really beyond the limiting because I do all that, the limiting
Right.
beliefs, the this, the that, the other. It's really beyond that. It's really about, ET go home kind of a thing. It's almost like ET goes home and then ET goes, oh my gosh, I've not realized that that was here right inside of me all along. Oh my gosh.
It's really amazing because I know that I had very much a similar experience this year. And, I've been doing this work for over 35 years. I know how to get myself, I know all the tricks, the tools, all of that stuff. And I think I was aware on many different levels that everything is in here, but I hadn't felt it. There's a
Yeah.
difference because it was like I knew it on the macro level, right? We know,
Yes.
and you've been hearing it your whole life. Everything you need is within yourself, but you have to experience it. And
Yes.
until you experience that at a micro level, and it was so empowering to me, it was like, wow, I thought I knew this all along, and I really didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying. It's very much about embodying this new feeling of being alive, of being part of the earth, Mother Earth, as she's going through traumatic changes. We just had a lot of fires here in California. It was quite traumatic to the animals, to me, because I'm very connected to Mother Earth, and I could feel it was very discombobulating to me. But it's really the embodiment. So any practices that really help you to embody the authentic feeling you, which leads me to something I just read during the retreat, and it's called Emotions as Messengers.
Mm-hmm.
Would
Yeah,
you
it's hard
mind
to
it?
see, but
Would you
yeah,
mind if I
please.
read just a little bit?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
So this is called E-motion messengers, awakening and recognizing the real feeling you. Feelings are your personal messengers, helping you fine-tune and navigate the terrains of your life. They're meant to flow and move through you to keep you real and authentic on your journey. Don't shoot or disregard this precious messenger, for it only has your highest good at heart. And the heart indeed is the guardian of your tears, allowing the river thereof to find its own organic way to flow to and through you naturally. The tendency is to get too heady and allow the monkey mind to take over, pretending to be the big hero or sorceress or rescuer. When you learn to journal and recognize feelings such as, I feel lost, I feel like it's futile, I feel overwhelmed, I feel powerful, I feel energized, you allow your feelings to become part of your internal and emotional guidance system and dialogue, directly communicating with you instead of cutting off your nose to spite your face. An inner compass, just like we use to navigate throughout the waters of the ocean, honoring our inner sonar and the ripples, the rippling effects we have upon those within our proximity. You're learning to trust and become the real between what is actually you and the preconditioned or preconceived notion of you, and the noise chatter in your head, serving as part of your micromanaging, egocentric control system, but not for your highest good. This indeed takes practice. Yet it is so essential to not get lost in the muck and mire of your life and evolution as you know it. Take heart, you are gaining momentum and personal power as you rise and shift through the different gears of your own evolution, step by step, and we are by your side, supporting you with grace, ease, and peace.
Mm, that was beautiful. Beautifully
Thank you.
written.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So we all want to be in that state of flow,
Mhm.
the flow state. Do you have any golden nuggets that you can share with the audience on how to help somebody find, even if it's just a little glimpse of that flow state?
Yes. So the flow state is really good to, first of all, look at from which state have you or are you navigating your current life,
Right.
right? Depending on, your audience or the listener, to what age they are, right? Are you in your 30s pushing and chopping and moving everything forward, right? Or are you able to learn to embody more of your human being through presence and mindfulness of who you actually are? Because then the more you are being, the more you become your authentic doing. Because then it is symbiotic, it is one and the same. It goes back and forth, and there's no division, there's no divide between the being you and the doing you. But of course, as a human, we separate those two often, right?
Yeah. I mean, most people are human doing
Yes.
instead of human beings.
Right. So paying attention to how you are navigating your current life is number one, very, very important. And then recognizing, how do you want to feel after you've accomplished something? Do you want to feel exhausted? Do you want to feel tired, like it is futile, or do you want to feel energized? Now, being in a flow state, Sandee, does not mean you're not going to work hard. No, no, that does not mean that. That just means you are living an inspired life,
Right.
guided by your spirit. You are living life guided from a joy flow state. You are living and working your life from the seat of your soul. And that, first and foremost, sits in your belly. It sits in your heart, which is the guardian of your being.
Yeah. There's a big difference between inspired action and just taking
Yes,
action.
yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in terms of steps, my first book, really, with the 7 habits, is more like a blueprint. High
Okay.
Performance Without Pain is a blueprint to helping the human. And I didn't know that, by the way, Sandy. At the beginning, I had no idea to how these two books were related. I'm like, what? I don't see it. And of course, then later on, I realized what I've been coaching clients was exactly the first step to this, right?
Yeah.
Can be a little
Yeah.
challenging if somebody just starts to read this only. And yet I've seen it happen, Sandy. I've seen
Yeah.
it happen where I have a client that I'm reading a certain part of the book, and they're just starting to sob. They're just starting to get very emotional and saying, oh my gosh, there is hope. I can feel this moving through me. And that's sort of the impact that this book has, is it's written in such a flowy state that, you know how the dolphins are. I mean, they flow. They don't know the beginning or the end. And when I recorded this book, because they wanted me to do the audio, I realized that even a lot more, Sandy, because try to read a book that doesn't have a beginning and an end period per se. It does, of course, but it doesn't because of the way they flow. But so paying attention to certain habits in your life. What are the predominant habits? Habits are a great force of everything we do. And of course, if it becomes unconscious, now we're living an unconscious life. But to adopt and adapt the habit of presence into your day-to-day life, learning to really fully become present within who lives on the inside and who is enacting the outside. And how can I marry those two? How can I create a marriage between those two so they can be in harmony? They can help to guide each other. So not the outside will guide you, but your inner wise self can start to guide your outer self, and it can go, come on back here, come back home, et, come home. Right. So there are some very fundamental habits that I have in my first book, but presence really being the foundation. And mindfulness, of course, is a big component of presence. To become mindful in the moment without judgment of what it is you are hearing, listening to, observing. And that then can open up a whole nother level of being present in your life and writing the waves of your monkey mind
Yeah.
as it's dictating you, right? And as you continue to bring out him or her much more center stage from the seat of your soul.
Mm, beautifully said. Yeah, and when you said to be, be present without judgment, that's probably the hardest part, because our minds are always judging everything around us.
Yes.
And for me, I call it just practicing neutrality and look at things from a neutral
Yes.
place.
Yeah, that's
Because
it.
Yeah, because when you look at things from a neutral place, you're able to then, because you're pausing, you're able to be like, okay, let's just look at this with neutrality. And then you can make an informed decision. Oh, that's not true. Yeah,
Right.
it just is. It's just
Right.
it's just a cup. It's just a cup.
Right.
No judgment.
Well, we're the ones charging it one way or another way, right?
Right.
So
Right.
in habit one, it's actually being a coach. I'm very much about integration. So it's kind of written actually in some ways as a workbook, even though there is a workbook and cards and a planner to my first book as well. But in habit one, you start to kind of really dissect what is presence actually, and why do I disconnect from the present moment? And what are my own specific symptoms of disconnection? How do I disconnect? What is my own signature of disconnection? Right?
Right.
Drinking, sleeping, talking, overactivity, you name it, what folks do, right?
Right.
Getting hyperactive instead of mindfully taking action, right? So then in habit five, which is equanimity and communication, which is what you were just referring to, in that habit, you really learn much more of, just like the dolphins create their own inner ecosystem that is harmonious and balanced. So with equanimity, you learn to bring that presence and into your state of being, where you can become much more of the observer, and then communicate from that place. Listen with equanimity and mindfulness. Speak with equanimity and mindfulness. But first, you're, of course, learning to do it for yourself. So like I said, I didn't realize how this first related to the other book, but then I got it, because it's like the human needing to learn, not just do this or this, but this is the habit to practice, and in this habit we practice this. And then when we're in habit three, acceptance and belonging, what are you talking about belonging, Daniela? Right? How do I fit into the human puzzle, and what kind of compassionate action do I take? And then it appears, just then am I able to have that greater level of equanimity and communication, where I can kind of step back and go, oh, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
wise mind, right? And the struggle between the rational and the wise, and the monkey mind, the reasonable mind, becomes much more balanced, back and forth and back, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I tell you, our minds are very interesting. It's beautiful, it's crazy, it's and everything in between.
Yes, absolutely.
For sure, for sure. This has been such an amazing conversation. We're almost out of time. Is there anything else? Because we could talk about this for hours. Um, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Sure. So there is a chapter in the book called The Voice of Joy Flow. And so, as we were talking at the beginning, what is the alignment process, right? So the alignment process is all about stepping back into your joy flow. Now, is all of that saying you're not going to work hard, you're going to stop planning, no, that doesn't mean any of that. That just means you are doing it from a place of greater joy and alignment in order to take inspired action, in order to really get up in the morning and go, wow, okay, I'm going to do this, right? So
Right.
paying attention to your joy is really important in that process. How do you want to feel at the end of the day? And if you don't mind, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but perhaps I could just read the first part of that
Sure. Yeah, go
voice
ahead.
of joy flow. So if the audience is watching or listening, I'm encouraging you to close your eyes and take one hand and put it on your heart, and the other hand put it on your belly button. And just as you take a deep breath, breathe into your feet and ground with Mother Earth. And imagine that your inner body is an ocean of equanimity, going back and forth as you're learning to ride the waves of your tide. The voice of joy flow. I am your guide to eternity, and along the way we float, readily down and down the stream, merrily, merrily down the flow, while releasing resistance to all of your human dreams. I am not physical in nature, but I am an energy of utter abundance, inviting all of you to play day to day. It's not difficult, you see, when you have engaged all of your creativity and your multisensory perception. You can then tap into the stream of what is alive momentarily, letting go of what resists and is not conductive to that flow, and use it as the ultimate conduit around rivers and rocks, or to actualize or materialize your highest aspirations. Inspirations that have been breathed into you from high above. Being in the flow is riding on the tail wings of your soul's effervescence, listening and tuning in to its call in the most practical of affairs, as well as the more limitless, and spiritual life endeavors merged as one.
That was beautiful. Your voice is so beautiful, and with your accent, it's very calming.
Thank you.
That was incredible. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandee. It's a
Thank you
pleasure.
so much. So where can people learn more about you? Obviously, I'm sure the books are on Amazon.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then can you just shout out your website and anywhere
Sure.
else that people can get a hold of you?
So I have two websites. My first website is vibrantlivingnow.org, and that's vibrant, just like the word living, and then now.org, not .com. And on it, you can find out more about my programs, my coaching, retreats, anything of that nature. And you can also order the books there. The audio, like I said, is available for both books. And it's kind of nice because people enjoy my voice and the energy that it carries. So they
Yeah.
often feel energized and yet calmed and soothed simultaneously.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the second website, my keynote speaking website is Daniela. That's Daniela, Bumann, B as in boy, Umann, DanielaBumann.com. And that's for my keynote speaking engagements. So, but I am on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Where else? That's TikTok, not that often.
Yeah.
So feel free
Same.
to, yeah, it's, I like to put out content and make it more quality and less often. So
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. Exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And for the audience, thank you for listening. And I hope that you and your family stay healthy and safe, and that your lives are filled with peace, joy, and happiness. And take care, everyone.
Thank you, Sandee.
Thank you.